Welcome to episode 200 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I talk tech, culture, and baseball with the San Francisco Giants' Bill Schlough.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who has a bucket list to visit every sports stadium around the world, Sean Callanan.
Thank you very much for listening. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to Sports Geek. And it is my mission to visit every sporting stadium in the world. And I was very lucky to celebrate this episode 200. Thank you for those people who have been here since episode 1. I recorded this episode actually at AT&T Park, the home of the San Francisco Giants, one of my favourite ballparks of all time. If you have been listening to the podcast over the past 5 years or so, you would have heard me talk very highly of the AT&T Park, both from its tech capabilities, sight lines, ambience, and everything else about AT&T Park. It still holds fond memories for me at the Seed Conference in 2015 to both play and get a hit, score a run, and then I think I had the most fun I've ever had with a microphone calling the game with Tom for the softball match at Seed Conference in 2015. So a lot of fond memories. So I thought it was good and quite apt to have Bill on the podcast for episode 200. It was good to catch up with him when I was in San Francisco recently, and we actually recorded this podcast in the dugout of the of AT&T Park, in the Giants dugout. So, as always, you can contact me, Sean, at sportsgeekhq.com, or via Twitter at Sean Callanan. Where should I record my next podcast? Where do you think I should be recording a podcast? But 200 episodes in, I've got a bit to say after my conversation with Bill. But you'd think after 199 episodes and I think 200 plus odd interviews I've done, and I don't think there has been a worse introduction for a guest than the one I did here. And the funny thing was, a little bit of backstory, and this is partly a shout out to James Eade, my podcast editor, who's done a lot of editing on the podcast. And again, I haven't been keeping count, James, but probably since episode 80-ish. I was talking to Bill and he was asking how much do we edit it, and I like pretty much for the authenticity to not edit the podcast and not take out the mistakes when I'm chatting with a guest. And I was very close to cutting this. I was very close to cutting it, and thank you very much, Bill, for holding me account and for authenticity reasons. Episode 200, here is my conversation with Bill Schlough and my worst intro in 200 episodes. Very happy to be here in sunny San Francisco, sitting in the San Francisco Giants dugout with Senior Vice President and CEO of the San Francisco Giants, Bill Schlough.
Time out, Sean. You just promoted me. No, it's good.
Did I?
But you promoted me to CEO. I'm okay with that, but you're going to have to talk to my boss.
All right, yes. Okay, exactly, yeah. I'm there. No, let's just restart.
You could have kept that if you wanted to. It's fine.
We will. We'll keep that in. No edits, thanks, James. We don't have blooper reels here at the podcast. So, Senior Vice President and CIO, it's a really important vow.
Yeah, it is.
At the San Francisco Giants since 1999. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, Sean.
I think last time I was here, we had a good chat on the other side near the first baseline, chatting about what you've done, and we've been circling each other to have this podcast. So I'm glad that we're finally able to lock it in. I always ask people when they, there's an opening question to give us your sports biz background. I'd love to know yours because you've been at the Giants for so long. I'd love to know, one, how you got to the Giants, but then also a little bit how your role has evolved over the past 20 years.
Okay, sure thing. Yeah, this is my 20th season with the Giants, so it probably sounds like a long time to some people, but here at the Giants, I'm still, like on the executive team, I'm not a rookie, but there's a lot of people who've been here a lot longer than I have. Yep. I passed a guy in the hall earlier today, Mike Murphy, who joined us when the club came west in 1958. This is his 61st season with the Giants, our clubhouse manager, Mike Murphy. So I got a ways to go to catch up with him. Yep. But I started out, in high school and college. I went to Duke and was active in sports there. Always had a passion for sports, but I didn't grow up in a household where it was expected that you could have a career in the sports industry. Sports was something you played. It wasn't something you got paid to do unless you were really good at it, and I never was good at any of it. But coming out of Duke, I just figured those days were behind me. No more. I rode crew. I played softball, I ski raced, I did a lot of things, but thought those days were behind me and had to get a real job in the tech space, working at EDS and in the aerospace area with Northrop Grumman out in LA. And, maybe a year or two out of school, I got an opportunity to work at the World Cup here in the Bay Area. I was living in Detroit, and when they offered me the job at the World Cup, I said, awesome. I love ski racing. I didn't know that they could host a World Cup in Tahoe, but that sounds great. So I said yes. I truly did not realize there was a soccer World Cup when I said yes, but I came to work for the World Cup soccer, and ever since I said, hey, this is where I want to be, world-class events, sports. And so started the World Cup, went on to the Olympics in Atlanta, and the Giants found me at one point, asked me to come to work here back in 99. My first answer was no. I'm a lifelong A's fan, but I learned quickly that you can play both sides of the Bay. That's not a real rivalry. We have a rivalry with the Dodgers, not necessarily with the A's, and so been here ever since. And best decision I've ever made.
And so and I think I've said this multiple times on the podcast, and I'll say it while you're here. I love this place, AT&T Park. It's all the views. It's a tremendous place to watch ball. But as a sports geek, it's awesome from a technology point of view. And I do understand that the internet in Australia is terribly slow. And I joke that the Wi-Fi you've got rolled out here is better than my house. But you guys were so early on that tech rollout and providing things like Wi-Fi to fans. And I remember the early days of going to, Seat in 2010, 2011 and the struggles, and people were discussing, how do we do it? Who pays for it? Why do we do it? And you guys were so ahead of that. You want to take us back to those decisions and rolling, all the infrastructure for fans at AT&T?
Sure, happy to. And when I think back, when we were building this ballpark, there were three key technologies I was involved in. So when I was hired here, they created the position of CIO. Yep. And to my knowledge, there wasn't one at any sports organization back then. But because of geographically where we are and the fact we were moving from Candlestick, building this new ballpark in downtown San Francisco, there was an expectation that technology would play a big role in that. Yep. And it's fun to think back and think of how innovative things seemed way back when. I was just talking to somebody about this earlier today. We provided 6 voice and 6 data jacks in every suite when we opened here, and we provided free high-speed dial-up to anyone who wanted to plug in when we opened the park back then. So crazy to think. Another thing we innovated at when we first opened was we were the first baseball team that we know of to move from VHS tapes to digital video. And digital video back then was not stored on hard drives. It was readable and writable CDs and DVDs that we used for video. And we'd instead of giving the players a VHS tape to take home with them, we'd give them a DVD, which was really innovative back then. And then the other one was on the ticketing front, which is really where, Russ Stanley, who runs ticketing for us, has been an innovator for so many years. But before StubHub existed, building this park, we can vividly remember, the team went out to Baltimore because Camden Yards was a great example that we looked to as an innovative park, and went out there and said, okay, we're going to sell out every game, and we're going to sell 28,000 season tickets to this park, but nobody's really going to go to 81 games. So how are we going to avoid them leaving those tickets in the drawer? What are we going to do? And the Orioles came up with this innovative solution that they called the Scout Free Zone at that park. And our group went out there and saw it, and they said, this is awesome. So they got this area at the park where there's season ticket holders on one side, the public on the other, and the season ticket holders can resell to the public at any price at face value or below, and then they can get rid of those tickets in their drawer. They don't have to go home. We love that idea, except for 2 things. Number one, if you're coming to the ballpark, Or if you're not going to use your ticket, why come to the ballpark?
Yeah.
And number two, why would you make them sell for face value or below?
Yeah.
We want to make these guys happy and have them make a profit. So that's when we launched. Within weeks, at the same time StubHub launched the secondary market, what we call the double play ticket window. So back then, StubHub didn't exist. So that was really innovative. Providing dial-up connectivity in suites, which ultimately became DSL and then Wi-Fi and then what it is today. So it's fun to think back to those early days and just the geography of where we were and our fan base, kind of really drove us to need to roll out these types of technology because the fans would expect it.
Yeah, because you've got an early adopter fan in this market. They're willing to try. I think I've been on the BART a couple of times and I keep seeing these ads for apps I've never heard of because they launch in San Francisco and in the Valley because people go, I'm going to give that a go. And so you've got this tech progressive fan base that are willing to do that. But, it
comes from all angles, too. What's cool about being here is, okay, your fans demand it. And then the staff that we hire, naturally, a lot of them are also pretty progressive. And then from the top, our ownership, which is a group of 30 folks, many of whom were successful as a result of businesses they started in tech, it comes from the top as well. So from all angles, it's kind of symbiotic and reinforces itself, And one of the things that attracted me to the Giants originally, our mission statement today, which we modified slightly, is we're dedicated to enriching our community through innovation and excellence on and off the field. And to come to a sports franchise that had innovation in its mission statement, just seemed like a perfect fit for me, way back 20 years ago.
And that's way ahead of the game. Like every team is now doing incubators and playing in the innovation space. But 20 years ago would have been standing alone in that space. And so you roll out all the fan-facing tech, and you've obviously got the challenge of the demands on that infrastructure doubling and tripling, as more people are using their devices. What other things are you looking to do that people may not see from a tech point of view?
So when we think about technology, we think about it in three areas: fan-facing technology to enhance the fan experience.
Yep.
Player-facing technology to improve the product on the field, and business technology to help us, grow revenues generally. So those are the three areas, we think about. And clearly, from a fan perspective, wireless has been something that has been a priority for us for a number of years, whether it's Wi-Fi or whether it's DAS or 5G, whatever next generation is.
Yep.
Enabling fans to stay connected here has been a top priority. And I'd say, I truly think of it this way. And for so many years, you and I were talking about this, is like people would always ask us, okay, what's the ROI on that? How do you justify that investment? How are you monetizing that?
Yeah.
And I say this honestly, and I don't know if people still feel this way, but okay, how are you monetizing your seats?
Yeah.
How are you monetizing your restrooms? It's a requirement. If fans can't stay connected, then they're not going to come to your park. And so that's something we've thought all along. Now, does it help that as you and I look out at center field, we see AT&T on the name of this park? Of course that helps. But that's really been, wireless has been at the forefront for a number of years. So as we look toward the future, there's so many, I don't even know where to go. There's so many different directions we could go with that. What's cool is, we get to experiment. We play 81 home games here.
Yep.
So we can try something for one game, and if it doesn't work, it affected 1% of our season.
Yep.
I have that comparison with NFL teams all the time. I'm like, the NFL guys are like, how do you work an 81-game season? Are you kidding me?
And they've got mini major events almost, because every game absolutely matters, and you put everything into it. And you're right, you don't have that. It's like the Olympics. You got 2 weeks every 4 years. Are you ready? Because there's no experimenting. Whereas with the length of a longer season, the MLB does, the NBA does, or the football seasons that are 20 weeks long, you've got 4 or 5 weeks to test something out, see if it works, without pushing all your chips in to go, well, this is one of our big games. Is it going to work?
Right. Love that. And that's one of the things I love the most about baseball is we can experiment and we can fine-tune things. You think about, we've been doing Wi-Fi, starting in 2004, so this is our 15th season.
Yeah.
15 times, that's 1,200 games of just baseball Wi-Fi at this facility. That's like I don't know, 6 lifetimes of NFL seasons?
Yeah.
Crazy to think. But so many different directions you could go. We're excited about how much technology is transforming the way the game is played on the field, the way we develop talent, the way we assess talent as we're about to acquire it. As we're talking today, we're 2 weeks away from the baseball draft.
Yep.
And we've just set up our draft room, and each year more and more technology goes into that room that started out 20 years ago with just a bunch of magnet boards and a bunch of guys who may even have been smoking at that point. Things have changed so much in 20 years. But that's really exciting for us. We have the number 2 draft pick coming up in early June this year, the highest draft pick we've had during my tenure here. And, of course, I'm not going to go into detail in terms of how we're leveraging technology to hopefully make the best selection, but it's playing a bigger and bigger role.
But it's definitely, without going into specifics, there's so much tech now that's happening on the operations side, whether it's the high performance, player tracking and all of that, to what the coaches are analyzing, to video, that 20 years ago, like you said, you were going, hey, we've got DVDs. We've gone from VHS to DVDs, and now you've got so much tech. You've got actual tech and IT people inside baseball operations that weren't there 20 years ago because there's so much that has to be rolled out. And the conversations I've had with people in the tech space, whether it be baseball or other sports, is that that's where there's a competitive advantage. And so you're doing your best to find this, the advantage on the tech side that you can help your team win more games.
And what would be interesting is if you were to do a survey of the 30 Major League Baseball IT chiefs or baseball analytics chiefs, and you ask them all, are you creating a competitive advantage with technology in your operation?
Yep.
Every single one of them would say yes.
Yeah.
But it's a zero-sum game. They can't all be. I mean, how many of them would be honest? You know what? We're kind of slacking in that area. I don't really think we're creating an advantage.
You don't know where the 1% is. And so, and someone might be doing something in video and the way it's cut up, or someone might be else using some other tech, or someone else might be helping the physiotherapist bring in a different tech. So there's a little, it's a bit of, you don't know. And if you can help return to play, it's a big point. If you can help, draft identification and analysis is just a big point. So you've got to strive for that. And it's the same as, the coach is saying, well, this is my methodology. I believe I'm striving for it. And so you've got to support whatever your coaches want and say, well, we want this tech rolled out. Bill, can you do it? And so your answer is always yes. And it's like, how do we do it, isn't it?
It is definitely, you're not going to be in this job long if you're in the no business, for sure. But, I think it is really, it's really fun to be in that space. And what's the value of another win? What's the impact if we're able to leverage technology to generate another win? There's a business value to another win. If we go to the postseason, that has a significant financial return for the organization. But ultimately, when I said our mission statement doesn't talk about profits.
Yep.
Honestly, it doesn't even talk about winning championships. It talks about enriching our community. But winning championships definitely does enrich the community. And, our ownership, while we're in multiple businesses at the Giants, we're in the baseball business, we're in the broadcast business, and the retail development business are our 3 primary businesses. But ultimately, our 30 owners, and that's been a continuous group in the 20 years I've been here, they're here to win championships. Yep. We've done it 3 times. We came really, really close to a 4th way back in 2002 that was painfully snatched from our grasp.
Yep.
But we're here to win championships, and if we can leverage technology to give us a tiny little edge, give us another win, it's worth the investment for sure.
I want to ask you about another role that you have. You're also chairman of the board for the San Jose Giants, and you've done that since 2012. What does that role entail for you?
So, I always thought when I started here at the Giants way back in 1999, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you take a job and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this for 40 years. I'm a doctor for 40 years. 40 years later, I'm a doctor. Okay, so my title is CIO in 1999. It's now 2018. My title is CIO.
Yep.
Well, that kind of sucks. I mean, did I even grow at all? I mean, am I going to retire in the same job I had when I was 29 years old? It's kind of weak. But the cool thing about being at the Giants, and the thing I love about this organization and my boss, Larry Baer, our CEO, who's been with us, close to 30 years, is that he enables and expects all of us to go beyond our standard job description and expand. Even if our title may not change, he expects us to impact the business and get involved in areas outside of the typical definition of the title. And at one point, 6 years ago or so, our CEO left suddenly from the San Jose Giants, and we had a over 50% ownership stake down there, and that was a recent acquisition for us, and the decision was made. We want to bring somebody from San Francisco down there to help kind of connect our organizations and facilitate knowledge sharing and blend our cultures that way. And so I had the opportunity to do it. Went down, took a leave from my job as CIO for several months and served as CEO down there. And once that was complete, found a new CEO. And it was an interesting process hiring a CEO down there. You would think CEO of a minor league baseball team, what kind of candidates are you going to get? You're going to get a bunch of baseball types. But no, we had here in the Valley, we had all these successful tech executives who wanted to be a CEO of a minor league baseball team so they could take their innovative, creative ideas and apply them in minor league baseball. So we had a wealth of great candidates. We hired a guy named Dan Oram down there to be CEO, and so I've served as chairman down there since. So I spend a fair bit of time in San Jose, try to ensure that we stay connected between our organizations. Ultimately, down in San Jose, our priorities are very different from what they are up here. Down there, it's all about providing a fun, affordable family entertainment experience and developing the talent that we have, developing our players. So in terms of the overlap between a CIO versus a chairman, am I doing a lot of tech stuff down there? I'm actually not. It's just kind of allowing me to grow through a different type of role.
And I think you've touched on it a couple of times, both on the length of your tenure and the length of a lot of people tenure here at the Giants, and you sort of touched on there about extending that culture down to San Jose and saying, well, this is the Giants way. We want you to feel part of that, but then have that culture extend. Can you talk a little bit about what's so special about the Giants culture?
Yeah, it's definitely it's like a family, but a family that is not. Somebody said I did a panel presentation before the game on Saturday, and somebody said, you know what? It was the best about that. It was me and 5 other executives, and I was emceeing. And they're like, you guys like each other. You guys are friends, and like the camaraderie you guys had. You're 5 different executives covering different groups, and you could tell you guys are close. And I'm like, well, we're not really friends. It's more family, to be honest, because we have our fights here and there. But we spend so much time together. And if you've been through the pain of 2002, where our hearts were ripped out in the World Series by the Anaheim Angels, and you've been through the highs of winning championships in 2010, 12, and 14 together, and with your families, and you're all in for that many years, it creates a bond. And I'd say, I give our CEO all the credit. He might be, he's a very outwardly focused leader. He has incredible relationships in San Francisco. I call him kind of the de facto mayor of San Francisco. He knows so many people. But the culture internally, he expects and wants all of us to be running and doing things no one's ever done before. And if we're wrong, we make a mistake. If what we did it doesn't actually benefit us, no harm in failing. At least we were trying something new. And he fosters that culture really, and that's why we are as innovative as we are. As far as why we all stay here, man, it's hard to replicate this environment. We're coming to work at a ballpark every day, ballpark every day.
Even that permission, to have enough, we would call it enough leg rope, right, to be able to go up, do something you think will work, but not be pulled back in when, oh, well, sorry, Bill, you got that wrong. Well, we'll have to tighten that leg rope, just be a bit more under control. Like you said, you've been in the same role for 20 years, but being able to explore different areas and tackle issues or tackle something you think is going to work, like that freedom, and that's what it is, it's freedom. It allows you, that's why you're there. You're not tied to stay in that cubicle, tick those boxes, tick off that list, which is, mind-numbing and, would cause that churn. And
it's not like it's tolerated. It's like mandatory.
Yeah.
That's what you need to be doing to be successful here. And I've talked to some of my counterparts in some other teams who are, I don't want to name names. If they listen to the podcast, they'll know who they are. Like one I went to visit, and he said, sorry, I'm going to have to cut this meeting short because I have to go to a budget flogging. I have to go sit with my CFO to get beat up over budget. I'm like, I feel sorry for you. And another one who told me, well, I can't go to that conference. I can't speak at that event because I can't get my name out there. It's not about me. It's about the boss. And here, our boss wants all of us to have our names in the headline and wants us to be perceived as innovators in all of our respective spaces. And that's really empowering and energizing.
No, it is a massive point as someone who's run into done a couple of podcasts that didn't even see the light of day because got shut down by the corporate comms team, and it's so frustrating. I'm frustrated for the people that I'm catching up with because it's like, how if you're not gonna let your employees be rock stars, then why do they want to hang around?
Yeah, I got to give another example. That happened to me last week. I had somebody in the media reach out to me and say, I want to do a story about two teams, you guys and one other team, because you guys are both doing some interesting stuff, in the wireless and ticketing space. And he said, only one problem. I reached out to the other team and he won't respond. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. The one thing that we have in common in this space, I feel, Sean, is that we are all so responsive with each other. All the IT chiefs and the technology types and all these, we all roll out the red carpet for each other when we come to town. So I said, let me call this guy. And I'm not going to name any names. Again, maybe he's listening to podcasts, he'll know. But let me call this guy. So I reach out to him and I'm like, dude, why didn't you respond to this reporter? And he said, sorry, man, our media and public relations group, we had an incident last year, and they say we're not allowed to talk to the media anymore. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you learn from your incident and it doesn't happen again, and you right what's wrong. But if you're just gonna close the door to all that, how's that gonna help anyone?
So, one thing I wanted to ask you, so being in close proximity to Silicon Valley, you've got the Warriors at the moment across the bay, but they're soon going to be down the street. You've got Levi Stadium opened up a couple of years ago. How much is just this city, as a tech city, just push you in this space to go? It's a bit of keeping up with everybody, but it's just do you just feel yourself that you're all pushing each other to raise the bar a little bit higher?
I do. I don't know that I think of it exactly that way, but it's definitely it works that way. I don't wake up in the morning saying, what's Brian Fulmer at the Warriors going to be doing, and how would I keep up with him, or what's Al Guido doing down at the Niners. But we learn from each other, and we see each other's venues, and our fans see each of these venues too. So in terms of the fan experience, we don't compete with other baseball teams. We compete with these other teams locally. On the field, we compete with the other baseball teams. But so. If our video board happens to be the second oldest in baseball, nobody knows that but me. Yeah. But if it's the second oldest in our region, all of our fans know that because they're going to the other parks. So I would say, so that's the one thing, the concentration of teams here. So you got two basketball teams because you got to include the Kings, and they're very innovative. You got two football teams, soon to be one. But that one, the other one that's moving to Vegas is doing some pretty cool stuff too. I was just down there meeting with them last week. So, and then you've got the two baseball teams, one which will soon likely have a new park somewhere in the region. And don't forget the Earthquakes. You got a soccer team that built a new venue too. All of them here in the region. What's crazy is this park in our 19th season, it won't be very long before the only sports facility in this region that's older than us is the Shark Tank. Yeah. Everyone else, including the Cal Bears and Stanford, will have newer facilities. So we're just like this old relic here in San Francisco at age 20, which if we were in Atlanta would mean we're tearing it down this year. Yeah. So that's what happens to 20-year-old stadiums. That's
what's happening in Australia as well. They're pulling down Allianz Stadium to put up a new one. So, and there was talk about the Sydney Olympic Stadium that was going to be raised and redone. But
that's what year? 2000?
Yeah, Sydney 2000. But the government money came and they're retrofitting it and not completely redoing it. But I didn't mean it from that competitive point of view, because the other thing is that it also helps you advance the fan, because you don't have to be the only one educating the fan of this is why you have an app. This is what all of these new things, because you go, oh, you've had that experience at the Warriors and the 49ers go, well, we know what a tech experience is because AT&T's led the way, and you can sort of piggyback off everyone's successes and what they're doing, and you've got a really tech-savvy, educated fan because you've got all of these teams in this market. It gives you that advantage rather than starting at the beginning where you did 20 years ago.
I think that's definitely true. And when the Warriors, open the doors to that facility, which I'd say we could hit a golf ball that far, but that'd take
You
quite
might
a drive.
be able to. Mine will end up in the water, for sure.
I think they all would end up in the water.
If anyone see me at Top Golf, they would know that I'll be lucky to hit the water.
But it is not far away. We can walk there from here. When that place opens, I don't think there's going to be anything we're doing here that is more innovative than them. I mean, with $1 billion+ capital budget. But the cool thing is we're going to learn from them. And what I always say is when you are a brand new facility, if you are not the most innovative sports facility ever developed, I don't care what city you're in, I don't care what your spin is, you need to be the most innovative facility ever built. So yes, Levi Stadium was. Of course it was. Yeah. And the Warriors should be too. But what the challenge is to stay there over the years. And so what happens? Do you continue to invest? Do you continue to stay leading edge, or do you just kind of rest on your laurels? So that's the challenge that I've faced here at AT&T Park, with what will soon be the second oldest sports facility in the entire Bay Area. But the other facilities, the other teams kind of help us stay on the leading edge.
Well, thank you very much. I want to finish with the Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I'm pretty sure I don't. I can tell you, I'll spin this the other way.
Yep.
The first sports event that my kids ever attended.
Okay. Yep.
Because I have two young boys, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I made a point to ensure that both of them came to a baseball game before age 10 days.
10 days.
Before age 10 days. So, and I'm a geek. You're a sports geek. I'm just a straight up geek. So I keep a spreadsheet that tracks every game, whether we won or lost, who we played, what stadium they've been at. So For them. Yeah, not for myself. No, I had to go way too back. So my 7-year-old has been to over 200 baseball games. Okay. And my 3-year-old has been to over 80 baseball games at this point. But the first one for each of them was before age 10 days here at AT&T Park.
Well, you should maybe you should check out former guest Peter Robert Casey set up My Baseball Passport. That's exactly what that it's there for, to track every single game you've been to. So if you've got it in a spreadsheet, I'm sure I can connect you with Peter, or maybe get an import facility just for you. But it literally is, because in the old days, because we're both old enough to remember it, it was, you keep the ticket stubs. Right, and that's what a lot of people did, and so that's where Peter's product he started in the baseball space, because baseball people are so avid in knowing I was at that game, and and there was that hit, and I remember that game. So that's a new twist. I remember. I think if I go back, I remember taking my daughter to a Melbourne Tigers game. I don't think it was inside 10 days, but she was pretty young, and I remember doing leading the Mexican wave. And throwing my daughter in the air and just watching the faces of all the people on the other side thinking, is he going to catch the baby? And I'm like, I caught the baby. She's fine. She's now 22. No harm done. So it's quite funny. And I now go to the football next to a family, and the girl next to us just had a baby. And she goes, when are you next going to America? I said, why? She goes, you're so loud at the game. I want to bring my baby to the game. I said, yeah, but you do realise your baby was, sitting next to me for the whole time you were pregnant. The baby is used to me yelling at a game.
Absolutely.
They're very adaptable.
It's pretty noisy in the womb also.
Yeah. So yeah, that was funny. But that's good. And obviously your boys have got a lot of baseball in their future. You would have gone to a lot of sports events in your years. Do you have a favourite food memory, or is there a go-to food that you just must have when you're at a ballpark or at a game?
Sure. I'll be honest about this. And my staff, this is like if you're on, they don't have Newlywed Game anymore, but the Newlywed Game, you guess one thing, you see if your husband or wife guesses the same thing. So if you did play Newlywed Game with my staff, they would all know the answer to this.
Yep.
I don't eat. I just don't. I exercise and I eat to live. I don't live to eat. Yep. So my go-to food at any stadium or any travel period is a Cliff Bar.
Okay. All answers are valid. What's the first app you open in the morning?
The first app I open in the morning, again, you're going to learn a lot about me through this podcast, is just I don't control my life. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Yep.
Okay. So when I wake up in the morning, It's Daddy, can I have the phone?
Yep.
And my kids, because it's more. You don't want to hear what a 48-year-old's doing with his phone. You want to hear what the kids are doing with their phone.
So what are they watching on YouTube, or is it the Disney
on
Channel?
my phone it's YouTube.
Yep.
And it's a lot of Paw Patrol and what's that other one? The stuff I get. If you look at my YouTube, you can tell I look like a 3 to 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But it is YouTube. It's my kids getting on Paw Patrol or whatever their other shows they need to watch.
And it's amazing, like how quickly and adaptable they can just pick up that phone and drive it. Right. Again, I remember when my kids were little, they would have to wait for the PC to fire up, but they could click a mouse and zoom around. And now, the kids can pick up a phone, pick up an iPad, and 3 clicks, they're already watching, the next episode of Paw Patrol. It's fascinating considering, us remembering our, Nokia playing Snake and those kind of things. This is the only device they've ever known, like that the internet is available to them all times.
And oftentimes this is how they want to consume content, period. I say, you want to watch Paw Patrol on TV or on my phone? They're good on my phone. They don't care the size of the screen.
Yeah. And that's definitely changing from a whole sports fan consumer. Like, back in the day, people will never watch. They'll never watch a game on a phone. They'll never watch no, they want it on the big screen. And it's like more and more.
Yeah.
The mobile is eating all the content. And you've got a whole generation of kids who forget second screen. The mobile's the first screen.
It totally is. Yeah.
Is there someone that you follow, admire, listen to, read, or follow that the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow as well?
My answer to this one, again, it might be a little weird, but my boss is not a big social media luminary, but I think it's a good career move to always hear what your boss is saying and be on the same wavelength as your boss. So truly, this is my honest answer, is that whatever my boss says publicly or in the media or at events, that's what I want to be following. So, he does actually, I pick him up on podcasts quite a bit. And so I'd say my boss, Larry Baer. Now, you're not going to find him on LinkedIn. He's not on LinkedIn. And I actually did a little study the other day at his request for LinkedIn specifically. He's like, should I be on LinkedIn? Tell me. I'm the CEO of the Giants. Should I be on LinkedIn? Let me think about that. Let me look at the CEOs of every baseball team and every sports franchise here in the Bay Area. Are they on LinkedIn? What percentage, Sean, what percentage of Major League Baseball CEOs do you think are on LinkedIn?
So it may be a demographic thing. I think potentially there should be more in this part of the world, being more tech, but 20%.
20%, 6 out of 30, correct.
Yeah.
And I didn't give you that before. This isn't, revisionist history. We didn't do a retake on that. It is 20%. But what's interesting also about those 6, and it's 50% in the Bay Area. So if you look at the 8 teams in the Bay Area, 50%. But those 6, almost all of them rose into their job in the last 10 years. My boss has been in his job for 20 to 25 years. There's only one that I saw. The CEO of the Twins, Dave St. Peter, was the only one, and he's not the first guy that jumps in my mind, but he's the only one who had been in his job that long but was on LinkedIn. So I told him, no, I don't think you need it. You need to be able to access LinkedIn, and you need to, but you don't need to have a profile in there. What do you want to be? You're already the mayor of San Francisco. So you're not going to find him on Snapchat or LinkedIn or Instagram. You're going to find him on podcasts here and there, and I always learn a lot whenever I hear my boss talk.
Okay, well, we'll put the Google machine on and find what we can. For mine, I think those numbers around LinkedIn would change if you go down 1 or 2 levels from a C, into the C-suite type of space, because it's becoming, I'm finding anyway, it's becoming more and more valuable from an information sharing point of view and what people are doing, and the fact that you can share some of your successes online to say, hey, we rolled this out, and it's a really good way to, connect with your peers and sort of keep up to date with what they're doing as well.
And it does a great job of curating content that is of interest to you. It's probably my number one media source, I would say.
Yep. And there you go. You've gone previewed the next question. The social media platform that is your MVP, would it be LinkedIn, or would it be another platform for you?
So I have a job and I have a life, right?
Yep.
don't really have a life. I have 2 kids, but
Yeah.
but for my job, it's always been LinkedIn from the beginning. And I think I access LinkedIn multiple times every day, no doubt, on my mobile device, at my desk, whenever I'm going into a meeting. It helps prepare me for who I'm going to be meeting with. And I also use it, like I said, as a news feed. So LinkedIn is indispensable to me. The other ones, I don't use Facebook. I mean, I'm a stalker on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm a stalker on Instagram.
Yep.
I use it for purely entertainment. And Twitter, I can remember when I first got on Twitter way in the early days. And the first time I tweeted, I was at a casino in Vegas, and it was at the Miss America pageant was there,
Yep.
right? And Miss New York and her entourage sat down at my table, my blackjack table. And I tweeted, you guys can look me up on Twitter if you want, if I didn't delete this tweet. It says, I was like, this is awesome. Miss New York and her entourage just sat down at the blackjack table with me.
Yeah.
But, that's my personal life, right? And
Yeah.
so, I don't want business people following that. And even worse, my wife followed me, and then she saw. So I haven't tweeted since then, man.
Yeah.
There's nothing good comes from me talking about my personal life or my work life there.
Yeah.
So I'm a stalker in all those categories, but LinkedIn, fully engaged.
I do think there's more and more people that are in that space, like using Twitter as a information resource, but not producing any content. But yeah, like people have listened to this. No, I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn, and I think I was on LinkedIn back when I was a geek. And I was I'm too lazy to update my resume. This thing looks good. I'll use that. And so I, did a lot to connect, with the developer community when I was developing and back when I was in the developer days. And then when I started Sports Geek, it was really the best medium to connect with the US market because I found Australians have a tendency to follow all the rules. And LinkedIn said you must know the people you connect with, please follow the rules. Australians followed it really, strictly back in those days. But I found US executives were more willing, again, you get hit up all the time. But if you're at least going to put in the effort and say, hey, Bill, I'm Sports Geek. This is where I work. I work in sports and technology. I'd love to connect. Most people will go, yeah, that makes sense. I'll connect. And then from that, that network of content and that kind of thing, it's been so valuable. And like the classic one, even though you're not out there looking for a job, the classic one is, my advice is to always be on LinkedIn, because you never know where these opportunities and connections can happen, because you don't want to be that person that goes, I'm looking for a job, now I'm really active on LinkedIn. Right. I'm sure no one at the Giants goes, gee, Bill's really active on LinkedIn. He must be looking for a job. It's like, no, 19 years, 20 years. I think he's good. He's here. So thank you very much. So where is the best place for people to connect with you? Would it be connect with you on LinkedIn, say you listen to the podcast?
Sure. But if I just get the blind LinkedIn with no text or anything, I'm not going to respond. I mean, I don't think people should.
Yep.
But if it's a personal note, say, wow, that podcast you did with Sean, that's the best I've ever heard.
You can CC
awesome.
me on that. I love getting that kind of feedback.
I'd love to connect with you. Okay, boom, we're in.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me, and I'm glad that this is the first time I've done a podcast in a baseball dugout. So I like doing first on the podcast. Thanks for coming on, and look forward to catching up with you down in Dallas for Seat.
Sounds great. I'll see you there.
Join sports executives from around the world at sportsgeeknation.com.
Thanks again to Bill Schlough from the San Francisco Giants. As I said, absolute pleasure to catch up with him, and also absolute pleasure to record a podcast in the dugout of the San Francisco Giants. Obviously got a few people to thank. I might have done this a little bit around my 50 year anniversary, but I'm going to quickly run through the names again. Thanks very much to Megan Villapuca, who keeps everything up and running. It's Sports Geek. James Eade, who I gave a shout out before, podcast editor. Jolly Garosp, who does a lot of the content around the podcast and the show notes and things like that. Obviously, DJ Joel, who does a terrific job with every intro for every single episode. All my guests, which I really think you should try to connect with. If you haven't connected with on LinkedIn and Twitter, simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/SGP guests. They're very giving of their time. I'm very grateful for that. But they're also willing to connect with the listeners. And that's the last group that I would like to thank. 200 episodes in, over 180 countries, approaching, or we may have even passed by the time this episode is released, 300,000 downloads around the world. Exceptionally humbling for me, and I very much appreciate all of your feedback over the years, and I hope for many, many, many more. One last thing, as I mentioned on episode 199, Sports Geek Nation Foundation memberships are now open. So now, if you haven't listened, if you did not catch it in episode 199, Sports Biz Slack is being rebranded to Sports Geek Nation. So if you go to sportsgeeknation.com, it has all the details of what Sports Geek Nation is. It's the Slack community. It's our Sports Geek Nation Facebook group, so you can converse and connect with people from around the world in those two groups. It's a curated sports business network. Over the past 2 years, we've been building that out. We recently passed 1,500 members in the Slack community from around the world, talking about digital technology, data, sponsorship. So it's a lot of great people. I love going into the intros channel and finding out what new people are doing, where they're coming from, what they're looking for. So if you're part of that community, please put your hand up, share what you're doing. Don't mind people bragging about what they're doing. Just one of the key things, and if you've heard me talk about it on the podcast before, steal with pride. And I think if more people are sharing what they're doing, it definitely is a case of rising tides lift all boats. So that's been the driver for the Slack community over the past 2 years. Over 30,000 messages. So it shows that people are posting and talking and chatting and sharing in those groups. So I'll be adding some pieces and some premium content to those pieces, including monthly Q&A videos where I'll answer questions that are posed in the Slack and the Facebook groups. There'll also be a monthly email where you can catch up with potential things you may have missed that are happening in the groups in different channels. And as a bonus, I've decided to, for everyone who becomes a Sports Geek Nation Foundation member, you'll also get access to every Sports Geek guide that we produce this year currently, so the Facebook data guide and the Facebook campaigns guide, but then also going forward. And so what does a foundation membership entail? It's pretty much pay now for 1 year, and that's it. Lifetime access for the cost of 1 year. And so if you've got some value over the past 2 years being part of the group, or you think you can get value, please, I'd love you to sign up as a foundation member. I'm very humbled by the amount of people that are using the communities that have been developed in there. And I'm looking to provide more content and value into those communities with some curated chats, bringing in people to discuss different areas of their expertise, but then also profile some of the people that are already in the community that are doing a good job and sharing content from different places. I love the community. I've actually secured a lot of guests. Some people that have become guests in the past 12 to 18 months have come via the community, and also been able to meet people while overseas and around via the community. So hopefully that network, I can open that network up to you if you're already part of that network. If you're already signed on, thank you very much for signing on. So you can go to sportsgeeknation.com/foundation. That foundation offer is going to close on July 15. So if you listen to this after July 15, my apologies. But as always, you can contact me at Sean Callanan on SportsBiz Slack. As I said earlier, we're giving a nice grace period. We're going to run it all the way up to the 3-year mark for the Slack community, which is in December. So you've got some time to decide, but if you do want to be part of the community and you'd like to take advantage of the lifetime offer, you can do so before July 15 when we push out the official launch. So as podcast listeners and early adopters to the Slack community, you have the opportunity to be a foundation member. So if you want to be a member, please go there. Or if you've got any questions, feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, I'm happy to take it on board. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. or at Sean Callanan on Twitter or in the Slack community. As always, until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Foundation pricing available for a short time at sportsgeeknation.com. Need help with your digital rate card? Not sure how to price your assets? Is there a disconnect between digital and commercial? That is where Sean works best, in digital divorce counselor mode. Book a time for a call with Sean to discuss the Sports Geek process. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.